you want a better product, stop following directions. Easy to use, no sanding between coats, a beautiful finish. While these are accurate, you're doing yourself a disservice by listening to, particularly right here, no sanding required. You should be sanding between coats, and here's why. Finishes that require layers, multiple applications, adhere to your surface in two ways, physical or chemical. A physical contact finish is basically just stacking layers, like stacking paper. You apply finish, and then you apply another layer of finish, and then you apply another layer of finish. And in between these pieces of paper, think of it like Velcro. You got your fuzzy stuff and your pokely stuff, and then they come together and they grab, and then they don't come apart. That is a physical bond that those two parts are making. It's the same reason why you would scuff up epoxy before applying epoxy on the top. You are making those little grooves for the epoxy to seep into and lock into place. A chemical finish is like putting a piece of finish down, I almost said paper, and then putting another piece of finish down, I almost said paper again, and it melting together. And then you'll put another layer down and it melts together, and you no longer have three sheets, you have one sheet. Finish reacts with itself and melts, and chemical bonds from layer 3 grab on and bond to chemical components of layer 2. That's a chemical bond. Now this one falls into the latter category, which is why you don't need to sand between coats, because it will melt into itself to create a buildup of finish. Both types present problems. The problem being that unless you operate in a vacuum in a clean room, there is dust and debris in the air. So you go and apply your first coat, and then you wait. And look, you don't have to sand. Physical bond, it's still there. Chemical bond, it's also still there. You still have all that junk on your bottom layer. Even overspray from your material, more so in a physical than a chemical bond, can cause imperfections in your finished surface. Now, if the imperfections that you have are just bubbles and little raised spots, and it's just chemical, there's no dust involved, then yes, you could get away theoretically without sanding, because as you apply more coat, it will even out those imperfections in your finish. But more often than not, there's just little bits of debris. Now, it's really important when you decide, I want a better finish, I'm going to sand between finishes, that you don't burn through your finish. That means when you apply something and you sand an edge, in particular is where they burn the most, and you sand through your finish. Lacquer is very thin, and it doesn't take a lot of effort to sand all your lacquer away. This is why I like using used finishing pads. This is a 220 finishing pad. It is squishy, it's got sandpaper, and it has almost none of its new grab that it did when I first started using it. It is very worn. That allows you to remove dust nibs and minor imperfections without sanding through your surface and ruining your finish. And when I say sand, this isn't aggressive sanding. This is a light swipe at the most. You can feel your surface to feel if it has imperfections. This has just a little bit of dust nibs on the surface, which is basically tiny particulates that were in the air that have settled into the finish and now create a unsmooth finish. And as you're building up layers, you want to make sure you're always starting with a smooth finish. In some cases, 1 or 2 swipes is all you need to appropriately remove those imperfections, and you are finishing, and you are always touching every surface that you sand to check to make sure that there are no issues. There's a little spot back here, needs a little bit more love. Now it's gone. Now that it's all sanded, you've touched everything, everything's smooth, there's no major imperfections. You vacuum it off, use a soft bristle if you can, so you don't scratch and mar your finish. After you've vacuumed it, you can air hose it, but you should probably do it in a different space than where you're finishing, otherwise you're just blowing dust particles in the air that are going to fall back onto your surface. Now that it's been vacuumed, I like to come back with a clean rag or paper towel and wipe it down to remove any residual dust that the vacuum may not have gotten. we can go ahead and apply another coat. After you've rinsed and repeated this process several times and you've built up your layers and you're happy, same process, but then when you get to your final layer, you'll buff out your finish to get a even nicer finish. But that's for another video. Now, by no means do you have to take all this precaution. Can says, no sanding required. But if you want to have a better finish and you want to produce a higher quality product, these are the steps that you take to ensure you're creating something that is nice. If you made it to the end, or you finish, or you have an opinion, sound off down below. Appreciate it. If you learned something, maybe give me a follow, a like, or a comment. Or don't. It's okay. Love you. Bye.